Details drive the news. This is Dennis Jers. I'm talking about journalism basics at Seton Hill University. In part one, we touched on about how there are many steps journalists can take in order to improve their writing. And one of the most important is to avoid pointless, boring intros like the one I'm giving you right now. That's not journalism. It's perfectly normal to start an essay by saying there are many things, or there are many parts, or when asked about, or if I had to pick. If you repeat the prompt in an essay for your high school English teacher, you get a few points. But if you give that kind of a boring introduction in journalism, you're just wasting people's times. So in our last lecture, this version on the left that starts with there were many people wearing, and it says one of these people was, and it mentions other notable costumes. The version on the left wastes a lot of time introducing the fact that it is talking. It's just wasteful. On the right, we get right to Jim Smith's words. Look at all the weirdos here, said Jim Smith. Who's Jim Smith? Nobody knows, but he's somebody at a thing called the Steelsburg UFO Convention, and he's wearing a tinfoil hat and a pink tutu, so his opinion that he loves it matters. He is an expert on weirdly dressed people because he's one of them. So that's a pretty good introduction. We can do better, however, than write something that's this dry. It's part of the journalist's skill to look at a sentence that's correct and start touching it up. It's not just about removing words. It's not just about being blunt. It's also about picking words that have power and punch. Rather than saying something 4 different times and hoping that the idea will get across, you say it once in the most powerful way you can. See that word wearing? Let's change that to sporting. It's not a huge deal, but it does give us a sense that this is a little bit more playful. This version on the left tells us that James Smith is at the convention, but let's flip things around. Let's instead say Smith sporting a tinfoil hat. In other words, this reporter is, without saying it, saying Jim Smith is one of the weirdos. A weirdo gives the opinion that he loves being at the Steelsburg UFO Convention. There's a tiny switch here that first we understand Jim Smith is at an event called the UFO Convention. He's just said, look at the weirdos here. The fact that we flip things around a little bit and changing that drab word wearing into a punchier word sporting, this makes Jim Smith's quirky personality important. We've got a quote about weirdos. We understand Smith is a weirdo. We understand that this weirdo is at a weirdo convention, and he says he loves it. We get it. The story is telling us this is a place for weird people to go and be happy. But it's not the reporter announcing that Jim Smith is weird. The reporter simply describes what Smith is wearing and quotes him talking about weirdos. So this reporter has carefully avoided making an opinion and instead is simply quoting somebody's opinion and explaining why that opinion, in this case, is newsworthy. So that's a slight revision, but it helps. So the electrician was one of 500 flying saucer fans visiting Elmdale Park. All right, let's change from visiting. Okay, and this is really corny, but since this is a lighthearted story, nobody died at this event, it's a light news story. Let's have a little fun with it. Instead of visiting, let's say they beamed into Elmdale Park. It's in 50 words on the right. That's so much more informative than the 71 words on the left. But we're starting to get some of the playfulness from the opening paragraph. Jim is apparently a playful guy. The reporter is sort of amplifying the tone. Without saying everybody was goofing off and having fun, the reporter is signaling through the playful use of the language beamed into. If somebody died in a fire at this event, you wouldn't use cutesy science fiction language to describe a very serious, tragic event. But if we say Smith watched the opening parade from a cafe table, all right, we're getting some more information, with a woman dressed as a Teletubby and a man wearing a cardboard box. Got it, but if you actually talk with these people and you learn that the woman is a lawyer and that the man is a homeschooling father of 5, and then again, throw in that word only, we're getting a sense of the emotion of this story. The reporter is not telling the reader what feelings they should feel. The reporter is instead supplying details that drive the story. The tongue-in-cheek science education fundraiser concludes with the costume ball Sunday. Okay, now I'm sad because my story is a bit too long for the space. I mean, in the real world, maybe your editor would just give you more room. But let's imagine that this is all the space that you have, and you can't do the thing that you did in high school where you play with type sizes in order to, make your words fit the available space. Let's just see. Let's do what a journalist does, and let's try to look for ways to trim out unnecessary words, and in the process, fill that space with more newsworthy stuff. So here we have a weekend of cosplay and camaraderie, and we have a tongue-in-cheek science education fundraiser. Those are some important details, but maybe what if we start cramming this in? Maybe leave out weekend of cosplay and camaraderie because we've already got tongue-in-cheek fundraiser. So let's move it around, and instead of calling them 500 flying saucer fans, let's keep that word cosplayers, flying saucer cosplayers who beamed into Elmdale Park to promote science education. Got it, okay. But now, here's where your news sense has to kick in. Do you know for a fact that all 500 people attended dressed as UFOs? They were cosplayers at an event devoted to UFOs, but we already know one was a Teletubby and one was dressed in a box. So calling them flying saucer cosplayers is, you can't verify that. Verify or duck. Don't call them flying saucer cosplayers unless you can guarantee that. So let's say 500 cosplayers and flying saucer fans. See, that was a duck. We know there were 500 people there. We know some of them were cosplayers, but not all of them were cosplaying as literally unidentified flying objects. So this is a better version of the story. Now see the word Smith here? Well, so far Smith is the only person that we've named. And the second paragraph is just one sentence long. So let's pack things up a little bit. Journalistic paragraphs do tend to be short, but these sentences, even though they're packed with details, they're probably short enough that we can jam them together and make one paragraph out of these 2 sentences. That's fine. We can add a little bit of news value by noting that this is an annual event that's happened since 2008. I think we need to throw in the word annual somewhere, but we can say it happened since 2008. So, it's in 2008. But, does it really matter that Jim Smith was watching from a cafe table? Who cares? That's a random detail. Let's cut that. And let's add the detail that it's a campy fundraiser that finishes with a costume ball Sunday, and oh no, we've gone on too long again. So what can we do to trim this to keep the word count from expanding? Well, okay, maybe we leave out the have since 2008, and instead of saying the Friday night parade, let's just call it Friday's parade. And we've called it a campy fundraiser. Let's get that word campy and put it in an earlier sentence. And then we have room to end this little item by saying that this event was first held in 2008. So all these details that we were trying to put in this other version that went too long, we can, with a little bit of trimming, we're jamming it in there. So the version on the right is so much more informative than the version on the left. And now let's try to make this a little bit more enjoyable. Okay? I like campy cosplayers, flying saucer fans. That's good. I like that. The campy cosplayers. This language is a little bit poetic. We're playing a little bit with the alliteration here. Can we do better? Can we say flying saucer followers? You've got the L in followers and the FL in flying, and saucer followers kind of rhymes. So I think campy cosplayers and flying saucer followers has a rhythm to it. Let's get even better, though. Campy cosplayers and flying saucer aficionados. I love it. Chef's kiss at that language. good journalism, once you've got the facts down, journalists can play with their language. Now, again, you would play with your language ordinarily if it's not a serious story. But the thing is, if you as a reporter can get all the facts down by the deadline, and you can also play with your language, then you are really mastering language. And whether you want to be a journalist or not in your future life, you're a better writer if you practice being able to cut words that are not helping you meet your goal and replace those empty words with better words, with more powerful words, with information that will make what you're writing more useful to your reader. Then you are really demonstrating that you are letting details drive your writing and you're learning about journalism. Okay, so this is at Seton Hill University. I'm Dennis Jers. Happy writing.